Hello everyone, hoping and praying you all are in good health. As we have gathered here today through this medium, I, Riva Rose Babu, along with the entire Dexco team, welcome you all to this platform. As we are all aware, last week we had come up with Answer Key, wherein some of the doubts asked by our youth were answered by the professionals. So today, Kalyanipaki Youth is come up with another event, PEP Talk, an inspiring, innovative and an informative talk, an event to flourish our minds with positivism, patience and wisdom, to learn to cope up with the crises that come along our ways, to discuss the problems and uneasiness which each of us face during this present scenario. We have multiple talks lined up for the upcoming weeks. So today we have among us a prominent speaker, Mr. Biju Dominic, Chief Evangelist, Fractal Analytics Chairman, Final Mile Consulting. Today he will be addressing to us on the topic, how to be effective when working from home. We welcome you, sir.
Hi everyone, how are you? How's the pandemic treating all of you? You know, many times a lot of experts are saying that this pandemic is actually a world-changing event. The last time we had one of those world-changing events was the World War II, when when the world after the event is fundamentally different from the world before that. A lot of experts are saying that the world is not going to be the same after the COVID pandemic. I don't know how about you. Has things have already started changing in your life? There's one thing I know for all of you who have started working. There's one thing for sure that has started changing is where you actually work from. And all of us are forced to work from home. And I think when the work from home policy was announced, a lot of us said, wow, that's great. I don't have to commute again. I don't have to get into those crowded trains and then, reach office and then work for some time and then evening again get back onto those crowded trains. And we said, wow, that's great. I can work from home. And we did start working from home. But slowly the realities of what it means to work from home started sort of hitting us. Yes, boss wasn't there. In one way, yes, maybe he wasn't sort of supervising you, but that sort of slowly led to procrastinating work, which in office you might have finished in a very short time. You sort of postponed that. You suddenly, you saw your members of the family, your parents or your sister, watching television, and you said, "Oh, let me also watch that because that's an interesting film that I wanted to watch for a long time." You sort of slightly deviated from work across there, and slowly, I think it started, sort of really started affecting you. You start realizing that yes, earlier when I used to do a good job, my boss used to praise me, but now that does not really happen. And slowly but surely, I think we found that I'm sure most of us, I think, started feeling sort of anxious. Am I really working hard enough, or am I not doing all that well? And that slowly led to stress. If some of you are feeling anxious and stressed because of this working from home, you're not alone. For example, I have about 2,000 colleagues from across the world, and we as a company has a policy of tracking the emotions of each of these employees on a daily basis. So we ask them, how are you feeling? And across the world, whether it's United States, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Australia, whether it's India, whether it's London, I think we get the same response. Things are not too good. We are feeling a bit anxious. We are feeling a bit stressed. We don't know what to do. And our HR team has been working a lot to actually see what is it that we can get people to make sure that as they work from home, they're not too stressed out. And today, I think what I'm going to discuss in the next few minutes is to share some of those tips with you. How is it that experts around the world are saying that what we need to do to make sure that we work effectively from our homes? Because for some companies, not just during the pandemic, like Twitter has announced that post the pandemic, they said no. If you don't want to come to office, don't come. You can work from home. So there is an option that some of you and some of your companies would give you. So the tips are not just meant for this pandemic, but if that's the way your company goes, some of these tips would definitely be helpful to you. Let's go back and say, why did you feel so anxious? Why did you feel so stressed? I think behavioral science gives us some answers. If I had asked you, or even now if I ask you, how many identities you have, most of us, and most of the psychology theories also tend to tell us that we all have one identity, one personality. But the truth is that the latest studies in behavioral science, and especially this work was done by a very famous man called George Akerlof. So much so he wrote a book called Identity Economics, and George Akerlof won a Nobel Prize in economics. And he quotes a lot of latest work to say that all of us are not having one identity. We all tend to have multiple identities. And depending on the context we are in, we all have a different identity. For example, I think that's true. You look back and says, yeah, at home you have an identity. As in my case, as a father, as a husband, I have an identity. But when I go to and I behave in a certain way, I look at all the situations that I face at home in a certain way, and even I dress up in a certain way because of that identity. Now, when I go to office, do I have the same identity? No, absolutely no. I tend to look at situations slightly in a different way. There might be certain underlining personality traits which are common both at home and in this, but most of us tend to look differently. Especially, as I said, it's the dress. For example, all of you, I'm sure, when at home, what dress do you wear? I'm sure you wear your shorts and your t-shirts, and girls or boys, and that's what we are. But do you wear that to your office? No. Most of the companies that you work with won't even allow you, unless it's a Friday, to wear, get you to wear jeans. So when you go to office, you tend to wear formal trousers and shirts. So you tend to change into a new dress. That's exactly what happens, and we had taken that for granted. So when we were getting into that crowded train, we were sort of transitioning from that identity that you had. So early in the morning, when you got up, you moved from your shorts and your t-shirts, and you put on your dress, and then you start, the formal dress. Then you actually traveled a bit. You were sort of transitioning from one identity, which is your home identity, to your identity to the office. And as soon as you reached office, the way you sat, the way you spoke, the way you communicated become fundamentally different. Now, when you were working from office, that transitioning was very, very easy. And not just transitioning, you could actually make sure that, yes, you continue to have two different identities because you were in two different contexts. But what happened now that you're working from home? You have the same work, the home environment, and we call it, the context is the same, but you have the identity as your home identity. You also have the identity of work, and that tend to clash. And that clash is what is creating the problem. And this is all the more for people who are married, all the more for women, because suddenly your child is crying, and you're on a call, and a Zoom call with the whole team. Now, what do? Do you continue to speak to your team and talk to them about the project, or do you go and take care of the child? Now, there is that conflict that is building up in all of us, and that is what is creating the problem. Now, we can't get away because the context, the moment you talk about work from home, the context is going to be the same. So how do you deal with it? How do you deal with this particular conflict is the first area that we need to work on. I think behavioral science actually offers you a solution for that, or maybe multiple solutions. The first thing you need to do is, yes, you need to make that transition, which means, first of all, you should have a permanent working hours. Take it as 9 to 5, if that's the way you've been working in the office. Same, keep that at home too, 9 to 5. Second, transition. That means around 8 o'clock, have a bath, finish your breakfast, change your dress. Now, change from your t-shirt and from your shorts, you move into, need not be that formal, but at least change it into a bit more formal dress. Now, that transition of your dress tells your brain that you are now not in the home identity. You are into the professional identity and the work identity. The third is not just change your dress. I think make sure that you find a place in your home which is call it the office space. Make sure that's not your bedroom ideally, because you tend to see that bed that's there, and your tendency is because, oh, let me just stretch my leg, I'll sit on the bed and work, and then slowly your brain thinks that you are in that home identity, and slowly you start feeling sleepy. So the best thing is maybe convert your dining room table into a part of that, in the corner of that, one chair into your office space, and then make sure that every day at 9 o'clock you reach there and sit down and take your laptop, take your mobile phone, and then start working from there. Now that change sort of sets you into it. Now then you start working. Now it depends upon the way your teams are structured. I think find that time to work. But it's also important that when you finish those work hours, create a ritual to say that now I'm no more in my office identity. Make sure, assume you have a dog and you have to take the dog for a walk, do that. Or maybe that's when, of course, you move back into your t-shirts and your shorts. I think you need to tell your brain again that you no more in the office identity, that you are in the home identity back. And I think that transitioning and rituals to get you to do that transitioning it's important. And I can assure you, and I think I've been doing that. My wife initially was a bit surprised when I said, "Oh, why are you wearing your white shirt that you normally wear to office every day? And why are you wearing it now?" But I think now she knows that, yes, I think that's part of it. I think I've sort of managed, and a lot of my colleagues, and I've heard across the world a lot of articles saying that whoever has managed to do that transitioning and make the distinction between the home identity and the work identity has managed to reduce that level of conflict. Second, we need to keep in mind is, yes, the pandemic has made us all start work from home, all alone, sitting in one place and work. But work was never an individual activity. If you look at it evolutionarily, when we were, and the human race was in the savannas, and our work was all about trying to find, an animal that we need to kill and have, and have our breakfast and have our food. I think what did we do? It's not just one individual who ran after that. All of us, the whole group ran after it. It was a group activity. Even when years later, we started agriculture. Agriculture was a group activity, whether it's planting the seeds, whether it's getting the water through the harvesting, was a huge group activity of a celebration. And we know that in a lot of festivals in India are based on harvesting, because it's a group activity. After the harvest is over, in a group, I think we all celebrate. So we need to believe, and we need to really keep in mind that we are not, as humans, and we are not meant to be sitting all alone in a house. So I think we will have that tension when we are not in touch with people. So I think what is required during this pandemic is reach out to people, reach out to your friends, reach out to your own employees. I think even in the work time, I think my one big request, one suggestion that I would make is increase your personal caution. You could have written an email, but I would say take your phone and speak to that particular person. Yes, you could have spoken to that particular person, but I think switch on your video and have a video call. I mean, just raise the level of personal caution, as we call it, within each of those interactions. That just makes you closer. A bit more social connections start building with your colleagues. And I can tell you, these social connections, and of course, I think also find time, because even in the office, whether it's what we call the water cooler conversations, with a coffee, you sit in the canteen and chit chat. You talk about which movie did you watch, how is that movie, and I'm sure a lot of those chit chats do find time to speak to your colleagues and have that little chit chats, because those little social interactions, now that we'll have on the phone or on the video call, I can assure you is going to give you energy boosts. And those energy shots, as we call it, it's very, very good, because that also sort of reduces the level of stress that we find by sitting all alone, within the four walls of a house. And the third suggestion, suggestion that I want to make is, this is not a perfect world, and this is not a perfect situation. Being forced to not move around, even when we move around, we have to cover our face. Wash our hands very often. And in that point of time, I think we have to admit that none of us would be perfect, because this is a situation all of us are facing for the first time. And many a time, a lot of stress is building up. A lot of us are not really enjoying our work. And as I said before, a lot of us are feeling very anxious. It's because we're all trying to be perfect. Yes, assume you were all perfect and you and I were perfect in the normal time, that it was before the pandemic. We cannot expect that level of perfection at this point of time. So there will be imperfections in the way we work, in the way we were delivering the project. Accept those imperfections. The moment we know that these are unusual times, and I can't be perfect and I will make mistakes, and we feel a bit vulnerable, I can assure you that feeling of vulnerability also makes us feel not to, sort of reduces the amount of stress that we will have at work. All that I want to tell all of you is, these are unusual times. As I said, the last time the world faced such a fundamental, world-changing event was during the World War, and none of us were even born at that point of time. It's a rare opportunity for us to experience such an event. As all crises, all events, and in life teach us a lot of new things to us. Let's be very, very sure about this, that this event too teaches us a lot of new things. And somewhere in the years later, when we sit with our children, our grandchildren, we can all tell them, there was this time when life was very different, but I managed and I survived that. So my wish to all of you is, I know it's a bit tough, it's not easy, but bear it out, and this will make you a better person. And all the best in your work, all the best in whatever you do. Just make sure that keep the stress levels low, and as much as possible, enjoy life. And as I said before, one of the best things to make sure is that reach out to your friends and make sure that you continue to maintain social contacts with all your friends, even though you're all close within the four walls of our houses. All the best.
I'm sure you'll have thoroughly enjoyed today's session. I, on behalf of Kalyanipaki Youth, extend our heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Biju Dominic for a highly informative session. We would always remember your advice that there would be imperfections in the way we work, and we should accept them and work on them. Thank you once again, sir. And thank you everyone for attending this session. We will surely be back with such informative and simple ideas which will lead to our betterment and a peaceful life.